And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your honor host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome back for the second year in a row, Megan Collins, here to tell us about her brand new red hot book, The Family Plot. Megan, welcome back. Tell us about this book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And yes, this is my newest book. It's a psychological thriller, and sort of the elevator pitch is that it's about this true crime obsessed family who gather to bury their patriarch, only to discover when they start digging up his grave in the family plot that the remains of their long missing brother are already in his grave. They did not know their brother was murdered. They thought he ran away. And so now they suddenly have a trauma to deal with, grief to deal with. But they're a very unusual family, so they deal with it in very unusual ways. Just as a little background about this family, their mother, Lorraine, homeschooled them with a curriculum that, included math, science, English, all that, but also true crime stories, to the point where she would reenact some of these murder stories in front of them. And she named all the kids after famous victims of murder. So they have had a very strange upbringing. And now that they've realized that one of their own was murdered, and that they're sort of in the center of a true crime story themselves, the mother reacts by suddenly she's baking up a storm in the kitchen all the time and cannot be diverted from that task, which is very unusual for her. The oldest sister, Tate, she has this really popular Instagram account where she makes these crime scene dioramas, particularly of murders that happened on the island where they grew up, because there was a serial killer there for a while. And now she's making one of her own brother's murder, which is particularly disturbing to our main character and protagonist and narrator, Dahlia. And then the oldest brother, Charlie, is creating a family murder memorial museum where he's going to open up their house to the island where they live, welcome people to it to prove that they are just normal people. But the things he's using to prove they're normal people are all these weird, artifacts from their childhood, like murder reports they had to write when they were kids instead of book reports. So Dahlia, who is the twin of the brother who was murdered, she is so disturbed and unsettled by the ways that her family is reacting to this that she decides she's just gonna ignore them, let them do what they're doing, and she's going to put everything into finding out what happened to her twin. And she doesn't know, was it the serial killer who was terrorizing their island for quite a while, or was it somebody else? And that's where the book jumps off.
Well, Megan, you hooked us good, and I can't wait to get into every delicious detail. But first, I just want to welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you're watching on Facebook, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on my channels, on Murder by the Books channels, we're so happy to have you wherever you're joining us from. If you've been here before, you know how this works. And if you're new, oh my gosh, welcome. Here's how it works. Every Monday for hashtag Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder, I give you my featured hand-picked authors, and you get to ask them anything. So ask the extraordinary Megan Collins anything about her writing process, her true crime obsession. Who else has a true crime obsession? This girl. How she writes, what she does, what her research process is, anything that's wandering in your brain, get it going in the comments. I'll get them right over to Miss Megan. Leslie is saying hello from Canada.
Hello.
Her signature hello. That's her signature Canadian hello. It brings me so much joy. Stephanie Cooper says hi from California. She is, of course, the Books to Grammar extraordinaire, Fire Pit and Books. She is saying Sara is the hostess with the most, is my favorite interviewer ever. Oh my gosh, Stephanie Cooper, thank you so much. How incredibly lovely. Thank you so much. That means so much. She's saying, oh my gosh, this book is already in my TBR. I can't wait to tuck into it. Tuck. We knew what you meant, Stephanie. We knew what you meant. We got you, girl. I'm gonna plop Stephanie's comments right here, Stephanie's link right here in the thing. So everyone go follow her Fire Pit and Book. She takes beautiful bookstagrams, writes some lit reviews. See what I did there. Leslie saying she so needs to get into this book. Yes, you do, Leslie. So let's dive right in, Megan. So I know I'm a true crime aficionado. I'm guessing you are too, because you wrote a family about true crime murderinos. And it's not just that you talk about the obsession, which I bet a lot of us share here, because this is mystery and thriller Mavens with Murder by the Book. But you also talk about how the circus of it all. You know, this family is the mother coming from her own trauma from her childhood, a little wacky, let's say. I'll be euphemistic. She's out there. But you're also you talk about sort of the show of it all, and how the obsession could get twisted, and sort of lose that authenticity. What led you to this moment? Was it a particular podcast or case that you were like, "Ooh, this is getting a little too much culturally"? Walk us through that moment.
Yeah, so it was actually when I knew that I was going to be writing this book about a true crime obsessed family, I knew one of the things I wanted to look at was why we have such especially now, a cultural obsession with true crime, and how does it serve us? Because it must. If we're consuming this all the time, even though it's so dark, it must be doing something for us. So I wanted to look at that, and then on the flip side of that, how is it potentially hurting us? Or I think about, just for myself, I say this all the time, that whenever the doorbell rings, I don't answer it because I assume it's a murderer. And and sometimes it has been somebody delivering flowers for me, and then I didn't get them because I was like, that's a murderer. So I think it's sort of this thing where there's a strange comfort to watching true crime, which seems so counterintuitive, but I think for women especially, and women by and large are statistically the people who consume it the most, it's sort of this weird validation of all of our fears that we live with being a woman and being kind of in sort of a vulnerable space. Because of that, walking down the street at night, you can't be alone, all the things that they say that you have to do to arm yourself instead of, other people should just not kill you or do other things. So I think that true crime offers this validation for us, that, and also almost like this, it's like you feel like if you watch these things, if you hear these stories, then you can ward against that happening from you to you somehow, even though you probably can't. If something's coming at you that's evil like that, it's probably coming. But I just think there's a weird comfort in that. And then another big thing that was that I know that I listen to the My Favorite Murder podcast a lot. And one of the things they say a lot is that, it's not about the killers, it's about the victims. And we talk about these stories because we need to share the victim stories and remind people that they're more than just this terrible thing that happened to them. And I agree with that. And I think that's such a great philosophy for this. But as I started to write this book, I realized, like, I don't know that that's really true, or that can be true, because every time you're telling the story, a victim story, they are a victim because they are tied to somebody who killed them or hurt them in some way. And, you can say, oh, it's about the victim, but I also know all these facts about serial killers, and I know all these things about them. So they're still getting their name out there. They're still getting like this spotlight put onto them. And so I really wanted to look at that because this family in the book, the mother's philosophy too is, we are honoring these victims of murder. We are showing respect to them. We are remembering them. They have these little honoring ceremonies that they would do, like at dinner, on the anniversary of different victims' deaths. And so I wanted to look at that, how that those really good intentions that come with consuming true crime can get skewed just because of the nature of what true crime is, and who these stories really are about.
All good points here, Megan, and very thought provoking. Because you're right. The majority of true crime fans are women, and what is the obsession? What is the nucleus? What's the real? What are we getting out of this? I liked your question. How does this serve us? And you're right. It isn't just about the victims, although we are very, very, I think, interested in that for all the reasons you listed, because it almost serves as a cautionary tale. Oh, I should be careful, or oh, don't go down that alley. Like that isn't already ingrained in our brain, but it's like it's validation. See what happens to girls who go down the alley, and so it's all of that. But you're right, we do learn a lot about, I know more about Charles Manson or all of these other people. It's so interesting. One of the many things I thought was interesting is that the mother in your book names her children after victims. So Dahlia, our lead protagonist, is of course named after the Black Dahlia, but all of her three siblings, including her missing twin, who she has been obsessed with trying to find all these years, only to find his bones in the burial plot that they're about to plunk the dad into. All of them have been named after victims, which kind of sent a chill down my spine. Why did you make that a creative choice?
I think it was just this thing that came to me out of the blue. I don't know. It was just one of those things. And I had this idea for a long time for a story about a character named Dahlia Black, so a reverse of Black Dahlia. And my idea in the story was that basically what happened to the Black Dahlia would happen to her. And then I was like, okay, where do you go with that? That's it. I don't know. But so I think because I had that Dahlia Black idea, then this idea came like, okay, well, what if, the parents are so obsessed with true crime that they name her after the Black Dahlia. And so her name is Dahlia. And then I thought, okay, well, all her siblings, they would probably do the same. And then when I just sat down to write the opening paragraph, I started with that. Like the first sentence is about her being named after the Black Dahlia and this sort of gruesome image of who the Black Dahlia is, or what she's known for. And then I just thought that was a good way to anchor the reader in, this is not your usual family. These are not your usual characters. Even they have a lot of baggage from being even carrying those names. She says in the first sentence that she learned the Black Dahlia story when she was 4 years old. And that is such a dark, twisted true crime story. And to learn that at 4, you immediately know, like, this family is a little messed up. And so these characters probably are not going to have like the typical worldview that you would have. They've been raised really differently. So I think that I just wanted the reader to be immersed in that idea immediately. Also, as soon as I thought of it, I was just like, I'm obsessed with that idea. I love that because it's so weird. And basically, I just kept putting more and more things into this book that were so weird.
Are you weird, Megan?
Oh, of course. Definitely.
You would describe yourself as weird?
Yes, 100%.
Show us your weird. What's one of your weird writing rituals? Do you do a little chant? Do you write to crazy, haunted, spooky music? What's your weird, Megan Collins?
I don't think I have any writing weird, but like, if you were to follow me around with a camera all day, like, I'm always just like bursting into random songs that are just narrating my thought process. And then I'll just say them over and over and not really even realize what I'm saying until my husband will hear it. And he'll be like, are you saying? And then he'll say whatever it is. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I am. So
is it like, is it a well-known show tune, or is it like, nope, must wash the dishes and then go to bed?
Yeah, much more like that. Or sometimes the other night I tweeted about this, so it's not like a dark secret or anything, but the other night I was just getting ready for bed, and what happens is I'll sing this for a while and then I'll tune into myself and suddenly be like, oh. And so what I tuned into myself singing was, there's a 50-50 chance that I'll kill you. And there was no one else in the room. My husband wasn't there. So I wasn't talking to anybody. But as soon as I did that, I was like, what is wrong with me?
Exactly. Well, you know what? I think your husband would be more concerned if he was in the room.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Stephanie Cooper saying, aren't we all weird? Yes, I think we are all weird, Stephanie. Thank you for putting it out there. Megan, thank you for showing us your weird. And this family and the family plot is weird. They each have their own weird.
Yeah.
And they each have their own sad. The
Mm-hmm.
mother coming from extreme trauma, herself, the surviving daughter of her parents being the victims of homicide.
Mm-hmm.
Dahlia searching endlessly for her lost brother, her sister and her surviving brother finding different ways to cope, barely sort of functional in their own ways. Did you feel like you wanted this to be was it important to you to make sure to have them all be scarred and wounded, or were you just like, let's have them be weird?
I think it just all kind of came out naturally from the premise, from once I started building in sort of like the traditions and culture of this family
Okay.
and how weird all those were. I was like, okay, well, now who would these people grow up to be? Because when we meet them, they're all adults now. And how would each of them have coped with this really dark childhood of you're not getting your traditional bedtime story, you're getting Black Dahlia and
Yeah.
the Manson murders and all of that. So Charlie, he is an actor, so obviously he's like sort of trying to escape some things by slipping into other personas. Tate has turned to art, but she cannot get beyond sort of the trauma of her own island that she lived on, where there was this serial killer and all this darkness. And Dahlia has never trusted anyone except for her twin brother. And so, like you said, when he went missing, she has spent her entire life since then looking for him, except she doesn't actually go out and actively look for him in places. She stays like 10 minutes from the island where they grew up on in case he ever comes back, so she can get there right away. And she just goes on the computer and has these sort of like rituals of searches that she does through social media. So they've all found different ways to cope and to get by. But it produces a lot of strangeness and a lot of ways that they don't like really sync up with the rest of the world. And I remember in my first draft, where I was just kind of like brainstorming the first few pages, it was like even more clear how distant they were from kind of real life. And like I had Dahlia saying that she basically learned what the real world was like through watching Gilmore Girls and seeing like, oh, they had mailboxes and they would send letters, and we didn't have that because we were so secluded. And then I kind of scaled it back and made them a little more relatable. Like they're still people living in our world, but yeah, I had so much fun with the weirdness of it. Like, I think this book is so bonkers, and it was so much fun to create all those bonkers moments. And it goes into some really dark, twisted places.
Yes, exactly. Well, Megan, the book is clearly resonating. A highly anticipated / best book of August, selected by Pop Sugar, entertainment, news, life savvy, crime reads, and many, many more. Congratulations on that. Not to mention the rave reviews in the New York Times and USA Today. I can only imagine how nerve-wracking it must have been for the New York to know that New York Times review was forthcoming, but they absolutely loved it. Raving with her third novel, Megan Collins may have unlocked a new level of fictional discourse on the true crime industrial complex. This is an examination of how flattening people into stories and turning them through the true crime mill creates lasting intergenerational change. Quote, an exceedingly entertaining look at how corrosive family bonds can become. Exceedingly entertaining. That is #goals from the New York Times. While USA Today raves Collins' talent to make prose moody and atmospheric is masterful. The family plot is a steady and satisfying hunt for a killer that true crime enthusiasts and thriller fans can both savor. Why did you set it on this spooky, atmospheric island off the coast of Washington State?
It's Rhode Island,
Oh,
actually.
Rhode Island.
Uh,
Sorry.
but only because I'm making that distinction because I always talk about my books are always set in some way in New England because I've only ever lived in New England, and so if I tried to do something off of Washington State, I'd just be like, yes, there's grass and like I don't know, some trees, but living in New England, I can access those details that aren't just like what I would suppose.
I can only claim temporary insanity because here I am in Boston. You would think that I could remember a Rhode Island, a state that I have actually been to, whereas I've never been to Washington. So you said it there in off the coast of Rhode Island because you are familiar most with New England.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the choice of an island, I think, well, first of all, I just love like a spooky, secluded island, and this island in particular, like it's not one that you'd go to like lay out on the beach or to go with the family. It's always described as very rocky, and like the shore is very difficult to walk through or walk across. And so, but as I was thinking about the setting as a whole and how it might impact the characters, I wanted to have sort of these like rings of isolation around this family because like 95% of the book takes place in the house that they live in this big mansion, or in on their property somehow. And so you've got this house, and that's kind of at the center of this island, and then it's got this ring of woods around it. So that's the house itself is already isolating because they're just like stuck with each other in these walls. But then the woods is sort of this other isolating factor because they don't have very close neighbors. And then you have like that rocky shore that, again, it's not a place that people would go to have a nice sunny stroll or anything. So that's sort of another ring of isolation. And then you of course have the water that's there, and there's other reasons why like the water and the shore is sort of creepy in this island in particular, which people will read about in the book. But so I wanted it to just be like as long as they're on that island, they are isolated. And whether they're on the edges of it or in the very center of it, there's always just more and more that's keeping them from other people and from the world around them. And that resonates in their childhood. And now as they're like sort of stuck together in this house, trying to deal with the aftermath of both their father's passing, but then this horrible news about their brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to welcome Kristen, Pam, Lynn, Susan, Kelsey, Pat, Laura, Jerry, Maria, Alicia, Julie M, Rebecca, Carrie, Christopher, Antonio. Welcome everyone. If you have any questions for Megan, get them going in the chat. I'll get them right over to her. Meanwhile, I want to talk while you're thinking of those questions. I just want to remind you all that you can grab your copy of The Family Plot tonight from Murder by the Book, our favorite independent woman-owned bookstore. And I'm plopping that link into the comments right now. So go ahead and click order because you're going to want to read this too. I read this earlier this spring, which I think is why I'm rusty on as soon as I got that arc, I was like, I know what I'll be doing this weekend, diving into Megan Collins's book. And I devoured it because I'm a true crime junkie and a mystery and thriller lover, obviously. And so now it's time for you guys to grab yours. Megan, let's talk about this review from Andrea Bartz, who was just on the show a few weeks ago. She said this is Umbrella Academy meets Tana French, dark, claustrophobic, and beautifully written. Andrea, of course, wrote We Were Never Here. What do you think? First of all, another amazing review. I love Tana French. I love that she honed in on that because I think what Tana's sort of known for is that dark, atmospheric, crushing pressure of the environment and of the interactions of the people. Mm-hmm. How did you do that from a craft perspective? How did you make it feel so like heavy and dark and sort of terrifying?
I have just found the more I've been writing thrillers that I just love having creepy moments and atmosphere and all of that, and that is just like a really joyful part of the process for me. And in fact, the book I'm working on now, like it's still, it's domestic suspense, but it doesn't have as many, it doesn't really have that creepiness to it. And I'm always like, oh, I want to just like, it doesn't fit with the premise or the tone of the book, but I just want to throw some creepiness in there because I just love it so much. But yeah, I don't know. I think that the setting really added to a lot of that sense of the claustrophobia, like Andrea Bartz is talking about. And I also always, I don't even know if this is like physically possible, but I was the writer, so I made it happen. But like I made this thing that like it's always windier on this island, and
Yes.
and you can always like hear the ocean even if you're at the center of it, but you can't see it. I don't know if that's possible, but I just wanted that to be part of the atmosphere. And I think that like the ocean is so beautiful, and I like the ocean is my happy place. Like I love seeing the water, but it's also, there's a lot of like darkness and creepiness to that too. Like all the unknowns there and all the things that can happen there. So I just think that a lot of it was the setting that I was working with was really helping with
Well,
that
there's
dark
also a
mood.
super creepy castle with secret passageways,
Yeah.
secret closets,
Mm-hmm.
secret super scary stuff in those dark closets, a terrifying shed with a
Mm-hmm.
basement. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Megan, I confess that after I'm a night owl, so I love to stay up late reading. Who else is a night owl here? Let me know in the comments. And I would have to do that and then watch, 10 minutes of Friends reruns just to like be able to go to sleep because it's intense.
Yeah,
Oh my
that's, I mean, that's amazing to hear. Thank you. And my dad, apparently my mom said that my dad, like they were reading my book, and then like my dad thought he heard something, and he like jumped out of the bed and screamed, and there was like
God.
nothing happening. And I was like, I guess that's a good reaction.
So if you read this book, the dad character, not such a nice guy, kind of a scary dude.
Yeah.
Did your dad say, Megan, are we okay?
Well, in my last book, Behind the Red Door, the dad was also not great. And in my first book, the mom was not great. And in this book, the mom, I wouldn't say she's like a great mom. So like I always have, the parent characters in my books are always like dark and twisted, or not even like dark and twisted. Like some of them are just like dealing with their own wounds, and those
Okay.
come out in
Mhm.
various ways. But I am really fascinated with like the idea of, I talk about this a lot, like the idea of bad parenting and what that looks like,
Okay.
because there's such a pressure on people to be such good, perfect parents. And I'm not even a parent myself, but I
Ooh.
see this in the
Well, you're a
media.
dog parent, Megan. That
Yes, I'm
counts.
a dog parent, so yes, I do have the pressure. um, so I always like going the other way in my books and seeing like how can I, how far from a good parent can I get this? And it's not
So
always like
interesting.
they're a bad parent because they're like murdering people or whatever. It's like they're bad because sometimes they're teaching their kids about the Black Dahlia at age 4, and like
Yeah.
and ignoring probably other needs or things like that, or they're dealing with past grief and therefore like not connecting with their child in the way that they should. So but my parents are not like any of the parents I've ever created, and luckily I think they recognize that, so they don't see this as a stand-in for them.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I thought you did very deftly with the mother character in this one is she wasn't evil or menacing. She actually thought she was keeping them safe
Yeah.
because she was so shaken from what had happened to her when she was a kid. She was like, I got to get my kids to, a safe location. I've got to get them on an island where I can control everything, where nothing bad will happen to them,
Yeah.
which we see, which in the New York Times, addressed as generational trauma. We see that happening. People, try to keep their kids safe. Of course they do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was a really cool aspect as well. Welcome, Tanya. Welcome, Faye. Great to have you. Benjamin, hi. Great to have you. Let me know if you have any questions for Megan as well. Megan, what you said you're working on your next one. What you got cooking up, girl?
So right now it's called Thicker Than Water, though with
Ooh.
publishing, who knows, maybe the title will change. You never know. But it's about two really, really close sisters-in-law who have basically been best friends since they met. And their bond is tested for the first time when the man who connects them, so the husband of one and who is also the brother of the other, becomes the main suspect in this really high profile murder. And he's also in a coma because he got into this car accident, which is how the police found all this evidence that links him to the murder in his car. And so they have this arrest warrant. And as soon as he wakes up from this coma, basically, they're going to arrest him. So these two sisters-in-law are like, we're not letting him go down for this crime. He did not commit it. Somebody's setting him up. So they're working together to clear his name. And in the process, they uncover a lot of things and they start to sort of interpret them a little bit differently, to the point where one starts to think, I actually think he might have done this, while the other is still like, nope, I'm certain of his innocence. And so that causes problems for them. And then things go on. So it's different from my other books in that usually I start with a family that's really messed up and we explore all the ways they're messed up. In this one, they start off like they all just love each other, they're having a great time, and then I go and I mess them up. So it's been like a challenge, but it's definitely allowing me to stretch a little bit and not just stay in my comfort zone of the family that messed up the kids and all those things.
Megan, you mentioned that next one is going to be a domestic thriller. What's the difference between a domestic thriller, whereas you described the family plot as a psychological thriller? What's the difference? What's that mean?
I mean, I do think that those terms are sometimes interchangeably used and can be interchangeably used. And I think that you could also call the family plot a domestic thriller. A domestic thriller, I think, or domestic suspense, is just suspense that centers around a family.
Okay.
It's domestic and gets into the family dynamics, and it's some kind of mystery within the family, or some kind of secret that's come out, or some kind of secret that's been hidden. And then psychological suspense or psychological thriller is a lot about digging really deep into in the name, into our psychology and the way we work, what we're scared of, what we're why we behave the way we behave, and all those things. But listening to those two descriptions, there could definitely be aspects of psychological thriller in a domestic thriller, and this one, the family plot, takes place in a house and a home with a family and is about family dynamics. So I think there's a lot of overlap between the two, but I keep thinking of my next one as more firmly domestic suspense, I think, because I don't know, there's just such maybe it's because there is not that immediate darkness within the family, and then I go and put the darkness in, but when there is that like underlying darkness, I always think of like, okay, we're in psychological thriller territory. I don't really know. I mean, I don't know if anybody knows. I mean, a lot of people probably do, editors and agents. And if my editor and agent are watching this, they're probably like, we definitely know, Megan, and you should too.
Oh my goodness. Leslie would like to know, Megan, what is your professional background? So Megan, people may be surprised by this, but give us the skinny.
Oh, thank you for asking that. So I was a teacher for 12 years. And I taught creative writing at an arts high school in Hartford, Connecticut. And it was the best job in the world. And I loved it so much to just sit around and teach writing and read amazing things with these students who wanted to learn to be writers and to work on their craft. And I made the leap to full-time writing last year. And so now I've been trying to do that and see, if I can make that work, but I still love teaching, and that has a very special place in my heart. I also am the managing editor at 3 Elements Review, which is an online literary journal. And that journal actually kind of acts also as a writing prompt to writers, because every issue we choose 3 elements, 3 things, 3 words that people who are submitting their work have to include within each piece. So for example, for this issue, our elements are town square, frost, and mercy. So everybody who submits a story, a poem, an essay has to include all those words in them. And so I really love that. I love being also on the editing side of writing. And yeah, so everything I've ever done, I was also like a reporter for 1 year. So everything I've ever done has been in the writing or teaching literature, and just being in the world of books and language.
Very cool. Leslie is saying that is awesome. Leslie, early in my last interview, shared that she's also an educator.
Oh, yeah.
So you two educators molding the minds of our future generations. Absolutely love that. Thank you for that insight, Beacon. I didn't know you were the editor. Can you say it one more time, Megan? You're the editor of, what was it?
3 Elements Review. It's the number 3 Elements Review.
Okay, cool. So they provide writing prompts. That seems cool.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard of them. So thank you for letting me know. So now and last time you were on the show last August, you were still in the teaching world. So
yep.
Very cool to see how things are changing for you. All right. Just making sure I don't miss anybody's last comments. Hi, Patricia. Great to have you. Jack, welcome. Good to see you here. Welcome. Just making sure I'm looking at all my screens because we're streaming to like 6 different places, Megan. Hank Philippi Ryan also gave you a fabulous review saying, raving, what a terrific book, completely immersive from page 1. The talented Megan Collins creates a unique and multi-layered novel. And she's saying that is part perfectly crafted Gothic thriller. So here we have another definition of thriller. I think that just means it takes place in a castle, right? Did I get that?
Well, right? Yeah, Gothic, I guess it's more like about the mood, and usually there's a big creepy house, and yeah, that sort of like darkness and family secrets and all of that. Yeah, I've gotten so many like psychological thriller, domestic thriller, Gothic. Some Michelle Campbell referred to it as Gothic suspense and horror. And until that point, I was like, oh, I didn't know I wrote a horror novel. I mean, I don't think it necessarily is, but I do think that there are certain aspects of horror that people who like that might find in there, but it doesn't alienate people who just read mysteries and thrillers. Just because it's so dark and creepy, I think it's a good like Halloween, October read, because it's definitely got that mood of darkness and spookiness.
Yes, a very good October read. Michelle Campbell raving, this is a masterpiece of Gothic suspense and horror filled with dark family secrets and stunning twists. So when you got that, you were like, wait, did this girl, she wrote horror?
I did. And then I was like, I guess things that happen are pretty horrifying in it.
You're getting thumbs up and love from Facebook. Thanks for the heart. Thanks for the hearts and the love, y'all. Great to have you. Megan, it looks like we are actually over our time. So I'm just going to say, what's one thing you want people to leave this book thinking, wrestling with, feeling, learning? What were your goals on that front?
Well, one of the things, like I've talked about, is definitely thinking about our obsession with true crime and you know what it does to us, because I more than anybody, or as much as anybody else, I love binging a true crime show or listening to a podcast and all that, but I do think that there is something a little harmful to keep immersing ourselves in that constantly, even though I also think on the flip side that it is sort of helpful to us in some ways, as a guide, as validation, like we talked about. So I always like it when people say they think about like how true crime operates in their own life, in their consumption of it. But I also, something I was doing, this is sort of a theme that runs throughout all of my work so far, is kind of the legacy of trauma and in a family, and how sometimes things get passed down, and how trauma in childhood manifests in surprising or not surprising ways in adulthood. And so that's something I'd love for the reader to be left thinking about after this book. And the characters in this book make a lot of questionable decisions, and you might not always agree with them, but my goal as the writer was to kind of leave them in a place where they could all hopefully be on a path to healing in the future. And then you can kind of do your own, choose your own adventure as to where they end up after that.
Choose your own adventure, indeed. One thing I was thinking, one of the many true crime series that I've been obsessed with is Dirty John. Anyone else has anyone else seen that? Give me a hands up. Let me know if you have in the comments. And one of the things I thought was really fascinating, aside from all of it, was, and I don't want to give it away for anybody who hasn't seen it, but how the youngest daughter, she takes care of herself and how she seeks justice in the end.
Yeah.
And she credits watching The Walking Dead, I think, with that. Now, she said that's how she knew how to execute the move that saved her life. And I watched that and thought, oh my God, I've got to start watching The Walking Dead because I did not know about the so-called zombie kill shot. I don't even know what zombies is. It's like undead or something.
Yeah.
I thought, holy crap, here is a teachable moment. Here's how watching true crimes serves us, because it could save our lives.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. And have you read The Turnout by Megan Abbott?
Not yet.
Because she said she was heavily inspired by Dirty John in writing that book. So you might really like that.
Ooh, interesting. And I've got another ballet book, another vicious ballerina book. Who isn't here for the vicious ballerina book? I've got a vicious ballerina book coming up in December. Tasty. You can always just get that Toshu and just, use that as a weapon.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Megan Collins, what a joy to host you again. And now that you're in the full-time writing world, I'll expect to see you same time, same place next year.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, Mystery and Thriller fam, thank you for being here. Don't forget to join my free Facebook group to continue the conversation. Request authors, submit questions, and win free books. It's in the comments. Mystery and Thriller Mavens on Facebook. I'll see you there. And I will see you at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. with Clea Simon here to give us the scoop on her book, Hold Me Down. See you soon.